Do you remember the last time you did something without watching yourself do it? No performance, no inner narrator, no second voice in your head grading the first one. Just living for a second. Most of us can't remember it because somewhere along the way we stopped simply being a person and started observing one, watching ourselves talk, watching ourselves feel, judging the feeling while it's still happening. There's a name for this weight. Not depression exactly, not anxiety exactly. Just too much awareness, too much inner commentary.
Hermann Hesse had a word for the person trapped in this. He called him a wolf of the steppes, a creature who doesn't belong in the drawing rooms of polite society and doesn't belong out in the wild either. Belongs nowhere. Watches everywhere. That's Harry Haller, the narrator of Steppenwolf, a man so aware of his own contradictions that awareness itself becomes the prison. And maybe that's why this book still lands, 100 years later, on people who've never touched a German novel in their life. Because it isn't really about Germany, or the 1920s, or a middle-aged intellectual having a breakdown in a rented room. It's about what happens when your own mind becomes the thing you can't escape.
Harry Haller believes he is two things: a man, civilized, polite, capable of enjoying a warm bath, a good book, a Sunday walk, and a wolf, something feral underneath, something that wants to bite through the pleasantries and howl at the moon instead of making small talk about the weather. He thinks this explains everything. The war inside him, the days he can barely stand his own reflection. Here's the part people miss on a first read. That split, man versus wolf, isn't the truth of who Harry is. It's his coping mechanism. Because a two-part self is manageable. You can name the two parts, blame one for your ugliness, credit the other for your grace. It's tidy. It's a story you can tell yourself at 3 a.m. when you don't understand why you did what you did.
But Hesse is setting a trap for the reader right alongside Harry, because the truth, once the book gets going, is worse than a duality, and also, strangely, more freeing. You've probably done this too, split yourself into the version of me that's disciplined and the version of me that self-sabotages, or who I am at work and who I am at home. Two clean categories for something that was never that simple. It feels honest to say I contain a beast and a gentleman. It feels like insight. It's actually a way of not looking closer. Because if you only have two selves, you can still control the story. You can still be the tragic, misunderstood man torn between civilization and instinct. What you can't be in that story is many, uncountable, contradictory in ways that don't resolve into a clean metaphor. And that's exactly where Hesse takes him next.
Partway through the novel, Harry is handed a strange little pamphlet, not written for him by name, but somehow it knows him completely. It's called The Treatise on the Steppenwolf, and it says something that should have been obvious and wasn't. The idea that a person is one soul, one self, one fixed identity, that's a convenient fiction. A shortcut language uses because we need a single name to call across a room. But no one is actually singular. You are not one thing pretending to be many. You are many things, temporarily organized enough to answer to one name. The version of you that laughed too loud at a stupid joke last week. The version that cried alone in a parking lot for reasons you couldn't explain to anyone. The version that's petty. The version that's generous to strangers but cold to family. The version that still, somehow, believes in things. None of those are masks over a real you underneath. They are you, all of them, at once, taking turns. This is where the book stops being about a fictional man in 1920s Europe and starts being about Tuesday afternoon, about the quiet dread of not knowing which version of yourself is going to show up to the next conversation. Because here's the thing Harry, and most of us, get wrong. We think the goal is to find the authentic self, the one true version buried under the noise, waiting to be excavated. But Hesse's answer is stranger than that. There is no statue under the dust. There's no final, stable self waiting at the bottom. There's just more selves, layers that don't resolve into a core. And the exhausting part isn't the multiplicity itself. It's the demand, the one we place on ourselves, that we shouldn't be like this. That a well-adjusted person is singular, consistent, easy to summarize in one sentence. What if that demand is the actual illness, not the contradiction, the refusal to accept the contradiction? Later in the book, in the strange, hallucinatory sequence of the magic theatre, Harry is confronted by something almost embarrassing in its simplicity. A radio, playing Mozart, cheaply, tinnily, distorted through old primitive speakers. And Harry, a man of refined taste, someone who reveres Mozart as something close to the divine, is disgusted by it. This crackling little box, butchering something sacred. But Mozart himself appears in the vision, and he laughs at Harry. Not cruelly, almost kindly. Because Mozart's point is this: life is the cheap radio. Existence takes something transcendent, beauty, meaning, love, whatever you want to call the good stuff, and plays it back to you through static, through a body that gets tired, through a mind that gets petty, through a world that interrupts your most profound moment with a phone buzzing, a bill due, a stranger being rude in traffic. You can refuse the radio, insist that real meaning only counts if it arrives undistorted, unspoiled, perfectly, and you'll spend your whole life waiting for a purity that was never on offer.
Or you can learn to hear the Mozart through the static. This is where the book finally uses that word people quote out of context: laughter. Not laughing at the tragedy of being human, laughing alongside it. The immortals in the magic theatre don't take Harry's suffering less seriously by laughing. They take it seriously enough to stop being crushed by it. That's the whole trick, if there is one. Not fixing the contradiction, not resolving the static, just loosening your grip on how seriously you need to hold it. Overthinking, at its core, is often just an inability to laugh at your own static. Every awkward thing you said last week replayed at 2 a.m. with
Full orchestral gravity, as if it were a tragedy and not just noise. A cheap radio doing its best. Steppenwolf doesn't end with Harry fixed. He doesn't graduate into wholeness. He doesn't wake up one morning free of the contradictions that made the first half of the book so suffocating. He's simply told by Mozart in that strange, half-mocking, half-loving final vision that he'll have to play the game again. That he failed this round of the magic theatre by taking it too seriously, by trying to solve it instead of enter it. And he laughs. Not a big laugh, not a resolved laugh, just enough of one.
There's no clean lesson here to put on a poster. No, and then he learned to love himself ending. What there is instead is permission. Permission to be several people at once and not consider that a diagnosis. Permission to hear the beautiful thing arrive through bad speakers and let it still count. Permission to keep failing at the joke of being alive and try again anyway. Because trying again is the game, not a detour from it. You are not one self failing to be whole. You're many, taking turns, playing an old, distorted, still beautiful recording of something worth hearing. So, the next time the static gets loud, the next time you catch yourself narrating your own suffering like it's a tragedy scored for full orchestra, try, just for a second, to hear it differently. Not less real, just less final.